At one time, I was an escaping slave too, just as all of you are now. And I'm kind of like you. What's your name? James. Last night, I didn't sleep that well either. After I got everybody in bed and tried to go back to sleep myself, I couldn't get to sleep. And when I woke up this morning, my mother was on my mind. You see, I haven't seen my mother in 30 years. And I just got a letter in February that she is still alive, and that made my heart well, but I just don't know if I'll ever see her in life. And I'm sure that many of those thoughts are going through your minds now that you've made your breaks for freedom. You may not see your brothers or your sisters, your mothers anymore. One day, all of the women on the plantation had been sent to the fields to work. Now, this was common, but that day they kept all of the children back. This was not common, but it was done. As soon as the women had went to the fields to work, a coffle, a line of slave children and men came onto the plantation. Now, I had just came from the fields myself, and I saw this whole thing with my eyes. Manasseh Logue, my uncle, who at that time owned me, claimed to own me, talked with the slave drivers, the slave owners, the man stealers, and they struck a deal. And Manasseh lined up all of the children that had been kept back. And he told that slave trader, choose any of these children that you want. He looked at them. He looked into their mouths. He looked under their arms. He looked at their bodies to see if there's any scrapes or scars. And when he finished his inspection, he chose 2 children. And those 2 children were my younger brother and sister. When he grabbed them and put them in chains and attached them to the coffle, to the line of slaves, and he began to move away after paying Manasseh for them, the children looked at me. And I looked at them, but I couldn't do anything. And they began to cry. And then they began to yell and scream. And when they began yelling and screaming, even the children that hadn't been chosen began yelling and screaming. And the women in the fields heard this. And they all came back to the plantation. And they saw what was going on. And my mother, Cherry, she saw that her 2 youngest children were getting ready to be sold away. My mother went and she grabbed them in a bear hug, a vice-like grip, and she wouldn't let go. No matter what they did to her, they took a lash and they began to beat her back, and blood went down her back. And she kept on saying, you shan't take my children away. You shan't take my children away. Finally, the slave trader, he got tired of this, and he picked up a wooden slab, and he was getting ready to hit her. But Manasseh said, no, you will ruin her if you do that. You may destroy her. And he got 2 of the stoutest slaves that were on the plantation. And they tried to pry my mother's arms from around her children. But her grip, her love for them was so great that even they couldn't take her arms away. Finally, one of those slaves took a rod and he put it down between her arms and the children, and he pried her arms away, and they grabbed her and they dragged her away, and they put her in the barn and they chained her down. From that day forward, my mother went into a deep depression. It was the first time any of her children had been sold, and she knew she'd never see them again.